When Samuel's mother was unable to have children, she was very grieved, particularly when her husband's other wife had plenty of children and mocked her severely for it. And so she brought the matter to the Lord, and she received the blessing of Eli the priest that the Lord would answer her petition. And he did. But when she made her prayer to the Lord, she said that if the Lord gave her a son, that she would give him back to the Lord. And so Samuel was born, and when he was weaned, she took him back to Eli the priest at Shiloh, where he began to minister to the Lord. But things in Shiloh were not good. Eli was old, and his sons who were acting as priests were self-centered and greedy and deviant. They were not faithful to the Lord at all. We continue the story in 1 Samuel chapter 3. Now the boy Samuel ministered to the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was rare in those days. There was no widespread revelation. And it came to pass at that time, while Eli was lying down in his place, and when his eyes had begun to grow so dim that he could not see, and before the lamp of God went out in the tabernacle of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and while Samuel was lying down, that the Lord called Samuel. And he answered, Here I am. So he ran to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. And he said, I did not call. Lie down again. And he went and lay down. Then the Lord called yet again, Samuel. So Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. He answered, I did not call, my son. Lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, nor was the word of the Lord yet revealed to him. And the Lord called Samuel again the third time. So he arose and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you did call me. Then Eli perceived that the Lord had called the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, Go, lie down. It shall be, if he calls you, you must say, Speak, Lord, for your servant hears. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Now the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel answered, Speak, for your servant hears. Then the Lord said to Samuel, Behold, I will do something in Israel, at which both ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. In that day I will perform against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house, from beginning to end. For I have told him that I will judge his house forever, for the iniquity which he knows, because his sons made themselves vile, and he did not restrain them. And therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be atoned for by sacrifice or offering forever. So Samuel lay down until morning, and opened the doors of the house of the Lord, and Samuel was afraid to tell Eli the vision. Then Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. He answered, Here I am. And he said, What is the word that the Lord spoke to you? Please do not hide it from me. God do so to you and more also, if you hide anything from me of all the things that he said to you. Then Samuel told him everything, and hid nothing from him. And he said, It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him. So Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, knew that Samuel had been established as a prophet of the Lord. Then the Lord appeared again in Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of the Lord. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share this account of Samuel meeting the Lord from 1 Samuel chapter 3. It was dark days for Israel, when the priesthood is not being faithful to God. they are to represent God to the people and the people to God. And so it is a very serious situation. It's not just that the king or people in the nation were away from God. The very priesthood, the very channel between God and men was disrupted because Eli's sons did not follow the Lord at all. They used their position for their own gratification. And Eli was too weak as a leader to restrain them, to limit them. But the Bible is full of stories where disasters are turned around. We have the disaster for Hannah, the Lord preventing Hannah from having children for a while, because he knew that she is one who would call upon him. He anticipated her commitment. Was she one of few who really trusted God in those days? And so she promised if the Lord would give her a son, she would give him back to the Lord. And so Samuel comes to the house of the Lord just as a boy. But while he is surrounded by so much evil, yet his heart remains pure. No doubt because he was weaned by his mother, and his mother had taught him the truth of God, even as an infant on her breast. Now Samuel is serving in the tabernacle, doing what he's asked to do, helping the old man, Eli the priest, who's almost blind. When one night, when all is quiet, all have gone to bed, he hears a voice, "Samuel, Samuel." The Lord is calling for each of us, and we are all like Samuel. We rarely hear his voice because we're not listening, we're not hearing, we're not recognizing. Often the Lord calls us through things that seem to go wrong in our lives, as in Hannah's case. The scripture says, "Call upon me in the day of trouble, and I will answer you, and you shall glorify me." It's an opportunity to experience God in our lives, and we should take it. We should say, "Lord, here I am. Speak, for your servant is listening." The Lord called Samuel. He thinks it's Eli, but Eli says, "No, go back to bed." The Lord calls again. Samuel races to Eli. "Go back to bed." He calls again. Samuel races again to Eli. And Eli realizes that it is the Lord who's calling and says, "Go and lie down." And when he speaks again, say, "Speak, for your servant hears." And so the fourth time when the Lord came, Samuel stayed where he was. He didn't race off. He just lay there and said, "Speak, Lord, I'm listening." And the Lord spoke to him and told him that the Lord was going to judge Eli's house. There would be no sacrifice that could take away the judgment that the Lord had pronounced, because Eli's sons had so deliberately turned away from the Lord. But the challenge now is Samuel brave enough to tell Eli to his face that the Lord's going to judge him? Samuel, a young boy, Eli, the old priest. But Eli urges him to, and says he must do so. And so Samuel does. He tells Eli what the Lord has said. And Eli knows the Lord. He is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him. He accepts the pronouncement, though it will be a great grief to him. For he's already been told by an earlier prophet, we read in chapter 2, that God would bring judgment upon his family because of their sin. This is the beginning of the Lord speaking again to the people through Samuel. A new beginning. God is the God of new beginnings. He gives us a new beginning, and he gives nations and peoples new beginnings when there is a person who is listening to him and speaking forth his word. And so, from Dan to Beersheba, Samuel was established as the prophet of the Lord. And again, there was a stirring of hope among the people.